Welcome to Cryptic Accounts, a podcast by paranoid people for paranoid people. And this week on the show, we're looking into Operation Snow White. I'm Patrick Ryan, joined by Dennis Cheney. Hi, Dennis.
Hello, Patrick.
And I'm excited. I found something that you apparently know nothing about.
Apparently. I mean, I don't know if I know nothing about it. I just intentionally chose not to research it while you were researching it, although I have never heard of Operation Snow White. So
Perfect. Well, that's a good start. I should say, I guess, before we get into it, we're starting to put out more of like a multimedia type of offering for the podcast on YouTube and on the Facebook page.
We are evolving.
Yeah, I'm trying to like take pictures, and eventually I'm going to put like video and stuff with it as we're looking through stuff. There's not going to be as much of that in this episode. But like last week's episode, the haunted archaeology, like I put the pics up that you were talking about as we were talking about it. So moving forward, that's going to be something that's going to be available. So if you're wanting to see stuff instead of going to the website, you'd be able to see a lot of that stuff in the videos and stuff. So, and what else? All the sources are available at crypticaccounts.com under the sources tab. So yeah. You got anything you want to talk about, Devin?
I'm pretty pumped. No, I want to talk about this. I'm reading. I intentionally put on the veil this week. I want to be surprised. I'm reading like your first couple paragraphs here, and this should be pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure we're going to have a lot to say about this.
You ready to get into it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, Operation Snow White. So, as early as 1960, Dennis, L. Ron Hubbard had proposed that Scientologists should infiltrate government departments by taking secretarial, bodyguard, or other jobs. So, we got the Scientologists, we've got the creator of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard. I didn't spend any time explaining what exactly they are, because I'm assuming most people at this point are aware of the Church of Scientology.
Yeah, and maybe we'll do a whole thing on them sometime.
Oh, yeah, dude, there's going to be stuff we get into just in this that could spin off into its own episode. Like, I had to try really hard not to veer off in other directions on this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a whole thing. You could probably have I think there are people who have whole careers talking about Scientology.
There's just so much.
By and large, it's a cult. It was created by a science fiction writer. He believes that volcanoes blew up. Or no, he believes that an alien race was destroyed and all of their souls were captured in volcanoes on the Earth, and then some ancient race used nuclear bombs to release them, and now this alien race attaches the human bodies as things called thetans, and all of your bad desires and problems and stuff are caused by these alien souls that attach to. It's a whole big mess. He wrote the books that became Dianetics and Battlefield Earth and all this stuff, and he legit had all these problems with the government. So, as you say, in the 1960s, he proposed that they should infiltrate the government. That was his counter-war against the government. I understand that.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's a pretty good just summary of Scientology. So, in the early 1970s, the Church of Scientology was increasingly scrutinized by U.S. federal agencies, having already been raided by the Food and Drug Administration in 1963. The Internal Revenue Service claimed the church owed millions of dollars in taxes, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation sent agents into the organization. The church's response involved a publicity campaign, extensive litigation against the IRS, and a program of infiltration of agency offices. You know, like you do when the government's messing with you, you start, going after them. We've all been there.
Yeah, that's say anything you want about L. Ron Hubbard. The guy had a plan. Like, that's pretty impressive. You're like,
oh,
hey,
yeah,
the FBI's after me. I'm gonna go after the FBI, and he like kind of did it. Apparently, is what I'm reading here.
Yeah.
That takes not only some chutzpah, it takes some serious planning.
Yeah. So the specific branch of Scientology responsible for Operation Snow White was the Guardian's Office. Now, it was created in 1966 by L. Ron Hubbard himself, and the purpose of the Guardian's Office was to protect the interests of Scientology. At the time of Operation Snow White, the Guardian's Office had its worldwide headquarters, Guardian's Office WW, located at St. Hill Manor in England. Headquarters in the United States, Guardian's Office US, were in Los Angeles, California. Those smaller offices existed in Washington, D.C., which is the GODC, and other cities throughout the United States. Each Guardian's office consisted of 5 bureaus. One such bureau was the Information Bureau, which oversaw the infiltration of the government.
Oh
L.
wow.
Ron Hubbard oversaw the Guardian's office, though it was Mary Sue Hubbard, his wife, who held the title Commodore Staff Guardian.
That's one thing about calls, man. If you want a good title, you got to join a call.
Well, yeah,
I would love to be called Commodore Staff Guardian. That would be great on a resume.
It is a pretty great name. So, in 1973, the Guardian's office began a massive infiltration of governments around the world, though the primary target of operation was the United States. Worried about Scientology's long-term reputation, the Guardian's office decided to infiltrate Interpol to obtain documents related to Scientology, as well as those connecting L. Ron Hubbard to criminal activity.
Uh-huh.
So, Jane Kimber, another high-ranking member in Scientology, handed this duty to Henning Helt and his staff. Around this time, L. Ron Hubbard himself wrote Guardian Order 732, which called for the removal and correction of erroneous Scientology files. It is here that Operation Snow White has its true origins. Though the order called for this to be achieved by legal means, this would quickly change. Hubbard himself would later be named by federal prosecutors as an unindicted co-conspirator for his part in the operation. Though extensive records of his involvement exist, many Scientologists claim his directives were misinterpreted by his followers.
Well, that's a pretty common. That happens in the government.
Well, yeah, you got to check the head man.
Have you ever seen that Mitchell and Webb sketch where the supervillain says, "Yes, we should take care of the superhero," and they're like, and then the henchman goes, "Are you asking us to murder him again? Like, why do you always use euphemisms? Like, just say we should murder the superhero."
Yeah.
And this happens all the time too. They, I mean, even with stuff right now with the FBI and a lot of the Carter Page stuff, they always use the excuse that it's like one rogue person who like misunderstood the directives, and it's like, nah. Like, you kind of set the tone, and people do what you tell them, and, so.
Well, you're going to find this wasn't like a quick, like, 1-week operation or something where, somebody could mess up.
You're right. They're being told. They tried to say that stuff about Watergate. They were just like, well, these people misunderstood. And they didn't know. I mean, it happens all the time. It's always... You try to pin the blame on the guy who broke into the building instead of the fact that there's a really big reason why he did that. Like, people were telling him to do that.
Yeah. So, Operation Snow White would be further refined by Guardian Order 1361. So there's been some orders going on, Dennis. Like, we were in the 700s a little bit ago. Now we're in the 1300s. Some stuff's getting done. This was addressed from Jane Kimber to Helt, Duke Snyder, and Richard Wygand. And we're going to get into all these people just kind of as it goes along. You just know that they're all high-ranking people and all in this Guardian office.
Okay.
So Guardian Order 1361 called for, among other things, an infiltration of the Los Angeles and London offices of the IRS specifically, as well as the Department of Justice. So just They're
Oh
really aiming
gosh.
for it now.
Yeah, that's wow. Okay.
While the order was specific to the IRS, the Guardian's office was soon recruiting their own field agents to infiltrate other government officials or offices, including the DEA, the U.S. Coast Guard, and the National Institute of Mental Health, among others, as well as the American Medical Association.
Okay. Well,
So
this
this,
is okay. Yeah, that's a wide-ranging. I would be interesting to know. I would be interested to know how successful that was because that's a very big goal. I'm gonna basically infiltrate the government and all this stuff. Like,
well, that's why I was saying this could spin off in a bunch of different directions because they were actually kind of successful.
oh wow, okay. Well,
Like
they
they
were definitely
basically just
successful. They got Tom Cruise. He's an American institution.
Well, I mean, they just get people that had the right credentials that they deemed loyal members, and then they just get them to go apply for jobs, and then those people would just start monitoring. And then if they could get to files and stuff in places like the IRS, they'd be looking for stuff about L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology. But yeah, they just get them in, like I said, as bodyguards, secretaries, whatever position they could get them in the door, they would get them in the door, and then they'd
So,
start.
oh, I see. So this
Because
isn't
this went
like
on for
we're gonna
years and years.
control the government. It's like we just need you in there to get the files so that we can be unmolested.
Well, just to monitor in general, or maybe, edit stuff that they deem false.
Okay.
So it's good to have people just there. That's, I think, why they spread out to everywhere. But like I said, we could almost do episodes about each one of those institutions or institutes being infiltrated. So the program called for rewards to be given for successful missions carried out by Scientologists. One of the sentencing memoranda in the case also noted that, contrary to what the defendant claimed, the programs planned by the Guardian's office were not restricted to trying to remove false reports, but include plans to plant false information. For instance, planning false records about a cat with a pedigree name into U.S. Secretary Agency computers so that later the creature holds a press conference and photographic story results. The purpose of Operation Cat was to hold up the American security to ridicule, as outlined in the GO by L. Ron Hubbard.
Okay.
Again, we could do an episode just on Operation Cat. They were busy in the 70s, just hands in everything.
Man. L. Ron Hubbard, kind of a boss.
Yeah, I mean, really. So anywhere where that's why they were in every agency, because anywhere that could, for some reason, produce a report about him or maybe some of the members or the church as a whole, they'd have somebody in there that can make those disappear or alter them or just add files completely. You're going to find they get very creative with what they're doing. So the start of 1974 saw Michael Mesner appointed assistant guardian for information in the District of Columbia. Mesner's responsibilities included the implementation of all information bureau orders, programs, and projects within the DC area. Meisner's supervisor at the time was Duke Snyder, the assistant guardian for DC, or AGDC. This was the highest position in Washington GO's office. So Duke Snyder's like an underboss, basically, in this guardian office.
Okay.
So in July 1974, Mesner was ordered by Duke Snyder to implement the previously written plan to obtain Interpol documents, which were then located in the U.S. Department of the Treasury. Meisner had more to do than just that, though, as by August he was also taking directions from Cindy Raymond, the GO's collections officer for the U.S., who ordered Mesner to assist her in finding a loyal Scientologist agent to gain employment at the IRS headquarters in Washington, D.C. This employee was to steal all documents dealing with Scientology, especially those involving current litigation by Scientology against the government. Go in and get the stuff about us going after the government now. Like the IRS doesn't need to have record of that.
No, 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 no.
Meis-
That's just again, knowing how small this cult is, I'm just very impressed at how good they are at
They're
this.
pretty big by the 70s, I think.
They're big, but they're not like that big. Like imagine if like the Baptist church did this. They would have millions upon millions of people.
Well,
This is like maybe a few 100,000 people. Like it's
yeah.
just so it's just so it's scary, I guess. It's what it is.
So Meisner discussed this with Raymond for a period of a month before interviewing various Scientologists with no luck. A month after the order had been given, Raymond informed Meisner that she had selected Gerald Bennett Wolfe. So the GO's actual infiltration of the government likely began when Gerald Wolfe and Michael Meisner were able to gain employment at the IRS as clerk typists. Under the direction of the Guardian Office, Wolfe monitored files on tax-exempt organizations and, when requested, illegally made copies for Scientology. Meisner supervised both Wolfe and the Information Bureau section in D.C. and reported to the GO's Deputy Guardian for Information in the U.S. So they're in. Like, they're in, they're undercover, nobody knows they're there, and they're just watching.
Man.
So in November of that year, so they've been there for a couple months now, a few months, Operation Snow White took an unexpected turn for the GO when they received word that the IRS would be conducting a meeting on Scientology's tax-exempt status.
Don't you love it's always the IRS that like screws up criminal things. Like the FBI is like unable to catch you, and then the IRS is like, hello, I'm here to audit you, and everyone's like, oh shit. It's always the IRS. That's who got Al Capone, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the unexpected branch. But yeah, so they hear, because they've got these typists in there, so they hear, hey, they're gonna have a meeting about our tax exempt status. And I mean, that's, if you're in a cult, I feel like that's got to be really high on the list of things to obtain, is a tax exempt status.
Oh yeah, you can't run a cult without that.
No. So this is a big deal. So in response to hearing this, the church sent a spy to bug the room. On the morning of November 1st, the day before the meeting, a GO agent, Herman, broke into the conference room and plugged the device into an electrical outlet. This device, in turn, then transmitted a FM frequency signal, which was picked up and recorded by Scientologists sitting in a car in the parking lot of the Smithsonian, which faced the office. After the meeting, Herman removed the device, and then the tape recording of the meeting was sent to LA. So they got it. They hear what's going on.
They're FBIing the government, basically.
Basically, yeah. Like, everybody's just wiretapping everybody in the 70s. Like, and there's not a lot of technology, so you physically got to get in there.
I have a lot of respect for this. I guess things haven't changed that much. Like, there's like Anonymous and 4chan stuff who will like hack things you're not supposed to hack, but this is like an organized movement to more or less not take down the government, but to be like an alternative government. I don't know. It's
and nobody really knows what's going on at this point. Like, they've been around for like over a decade now. They're not doing crazy stuff like this until the 70s. But you got to know that, I mean, they've had their hands in other places, like, and it's gone undetected. Like, nobody's really aware of what this office does and all that.
It's just so, again, as crazy as it is, I just have to respect the fact that they were this organized.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Oh, yeah, they got nothing but time to plan. So by December of that year, so a month later, Wolfe, Herman, and Meisner had sent a shipment of stolen documents 20 inches thick to Duke Snyder. That's a lot of paperwork.
Wow. That's almost 2 feet of paperwork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Snyder, in turn, then sent notification to Mo Budlong in Los Angeles, and by the end of December, Wolf was stealing documents from the IRS's chief counsel's office. Just days after Christmas, Wolf broke into the office of Barbara Bird, an attorney in the IRS's refund litigation service. Bird had been present at the November 1st meeting. Instead of stealing files, Wolf took them to a copier and made photocopies using government paper.
I mean, that seems like a very refined version of just stealing paper. That seems
Well,
like
I guess they figured that this person was going to she'd realize that these papers were gone. Like, these weren't in a general file. These were in her office, and this is something she'd been talking about recently.
I feel like if I was running this operation, I'd be like, take copies. Don't steal the originals. Like,
well, when they got the first 2-foot box of papers, they're like, look, this may not be the way to go about this. Like, somebody's going to notice that everything about Scientology is just gone.
I mean, I worked at a library. That was my first job. And, like, I could just imagine if I walked by a bookshelf and, like, there's, like, there's, like, 3 feet of books missing. I'd be like, okay, something's going on here.
Something's afoot.
Yeah.
So, later, Wolf met Meisner at a restaurant, where he reported on his recent theft. Meisner took the documents and underlined selections that he believed his superiors would find interesting or relevant and wrote a summary of the important points. This was then routed through the assistant guardian for D.C. and onto the deputy guardian for the U.S., the deputy guardian for information in the U.S., the branch 1 director of the Information Bureau, and the collections officer, all of which were in L.A. So separate copies to everybody is what it sounds like, which seems unnecessary. You'd think in a conspiracy, you just want to send the one file to the group and have them get together or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
A copy was also sent to Mary Sue Hubbard, by the way. So, wife of L. Ron Hubbard.
I love that she's named Mary Sue.
And so you got to assume it's probably made it into the Hubbard house at some point. But yet he got named, like I already said earlier, he was an unindicted co-conspirator in all this. How that's possible? Anyway. So, in early 1975, Dennis, Operation Snow White expanded again as Sharon Thomas found employment in the U.S. Coast Guard Intelligence Agency.
Ooh.
Which I don't know what strategic. That's the one I'm just like, I wonder what they thought. I guess because they're in L.A. and they are thinking about an ocean escape at some point, maybe.
Well, actually, oddly enough, do you know anything about the Scientology and their like whole sea division?
No.
Scientology
is a religion of the water?
Well, no, but they weirdly have this whole naval thing about them. And at one point, L. Ron Hubbard created, I think it was called like the Sea Division or like the Sea Guard.
Wait, is this what the Neptune Society is?
It might be.
Okay, I think I might be wrong about that.
I'm not sure. Well, all I know is
they bury people at sea, but I don't think it's necessarily Scientology.
Oh, no, probably
not. I'm sorry.
No, but at one point, L. Ron Hubbard, like toward the end of when he was controlling the religion, he made it about not about the sea, but about like naval stuff. So he bought a ship and like only the most important people could be on the ship. And then if you rose to the ranks, you could become like an admiral. It became very like naval based.
Okay. All right. Well, they're in there. Nancy Douglas stole documents and made photocopies of others. These were transmitted to Herman. By spring of '76, attention had been called back to the IRS case as Mary Sue Hubbard had instructed Kimber and Helt to use any method at our disposal to win the battle and gain our non-profit tax status. Got to get that win in. Got to get that win in.
It's all about the money, man.
So Helt wrote back telling that her request had been sent to the Information Bureau, who had been ordered to complete the collection of the documents from the IRS and the Department of Justice's tax files within 3 months. So they got 3 months to do this mission. In April, Miser procured a directory of the Department of Justice and located the offices that would have files pertaining to Scientology litigation. So, when he found what he wanted, he sent in Wolf, who broke into the offices of 2 attorneys on 3 successive Saturdays. So they're hitting this place 3 Saturdays in a row. And Wolf copied 12 files and met up with Meisner as before at a restaurant. And these files were especially useful to Scientology because they detailed the government's strategy in various court cases.
Ooh, he was deep, man.
Yeah, they were in it to win it. So in May, Willardson directs Meisner to implement Project Horn, which called for Meisner to provide a cover for PR and legal provide a cover for PR and legal for the way they obtained the IRS documents. So now they got to think of a reason of how they were able to come up with, feet upon feet of documents. Just, I'm assuming that they sent several batches. So I'm assuming just boxes and boxes of files from all these places.
Yeah, so, yeah. I guess at this time it's just really super easy to steal government documents.
Well, I mean,
I kind of wish they were doing this for UFO stuff instead of instead of stuff about Scientology.
Yeah, because this is when it was all on paper. There wasn't hidden file. You know what I mean?
Why wasn't MUFON or some UFO thing putting people? Apparently, it's super easy. Put people in there. And
yeah.
It's about. It's so sad that all this talent was wasted on self-serving tax exemption.
Basically, yeah, this is the main point. Also because apparently there was a lot of criminal stuff that was going on too, and they were trying to, muck up those cases or just muddy the waters or whatever. The idea of this PR and legal excuse for obtaining the IRS documents would be for the GO's Public Relations Bureau to view the documents without worrying about being connected to the theft. So they need them, but they also need to show them to these other people that aren't in this privileged GO the Guardian office. Public relations is a separate. I guess I guess they're in the Guardian's office, but that's how removed they are. These 5 things in each office don't necessarily know what the other parts are doing.
Right.
So the PR people need this information so that they can, put a spin on it, but also we can't have any extra leaks on how we got this information. So Willardson's idea called for Meisner to steal documents dealing with organizations other than Scientology. Just instead of that way people don't notice that our documents got stolen, and then we can just say we got them from whoever stole them somehow, like somebody brought them to us. It's kind of smart. Willardson also called for the theft of IRS stationery in order to forge letters from a fictional disgruntled IRS employee.
This is genius.
I know, right? I'm telling you. Genius. When you hear about their schemes, you can't call them dumb.
No, this is 1,000 times more intelligent than anything Al Qaeda ever did. I'll tell you that. Yeah.
The files on various organizations would be then sent out attached to the fake letter. The idea was that it would appear that an upset IRS agent had himself sent the files to numerous organizations. There would be nothing to tie it to Scientology. Wolf stole both the stationery and, without permission, files on the Unification Church and Bob Jones University. So spread it out a little bit.
Oh, okay, yeah, please do.
So he's got a little bit of everybody, or just a couple different things. And during the summer and fall months of 1975, the Guardian office launched an additional plan. So it just keeps on like morphing and growing. In July, Meisner was told by Cindy Raymond that the Church of Scientology had initiated a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit against the IRS. Meisner was directed to add the office of Charles Zurevin to his list of offices to monitor. Zurevin was representing the government in the case. Meisner immediately passed this duty on to Wolf, who broke into Zurevin's office. Wolf is the break-in guy in all of this.
I love that he's named Wolf, too.
I know. Several people have very
He's just like
fitty
so
names.
good. He's just so good at like being a predator.
You got the Duke in charge of everything. Just so many people with great names.
Was Elrond just like hiring people based on names?
You got to think it's in the criteria somewhere. It may not be, top 3 bullet points, but it's, 11 or 12 on the list of things you're looking for in, high-ranking cult officials.
I don't know. If I'm running a cult, I'm going on feeling, man. A guy shows up and he says, "My name is Wolf." I'm like, you're going to break into some government office.
Well, yeah, you're going to get some feelings when your guy tells you his last name's Wolf. He's a loner, he's a rebel, and he likes to hunt at night. So he broke into Zurevin's office multiple times, Dennis, because once, not enough. You're going to need to span this out from July until November of 1975. I got to assume Zurevin's like, you ever, misplace something and you swear somebody must have stole it? You know what I'm talking about, Dennis?
Yeah, I know exactly that feeling, yeah.
Like, you got to figure Zurevin is just feeling that, several times a month maybe, at least. Maybe only once or twice a month, but regularly for several months in a row. So, Wolf revealed to his superiors that Zurevin was preparing an index of Scientology files relevant to the Freedom of Information Act's case. IRS offices from all over the country were sending files to Zurevin. This index file, required by the courts in all Freedom of Information Act cases, is a total list of the documents requested and reasons for their exemption from the public, if any. So that's like everything they would want to know the government's thinking about these files they have, basically. And what are you putting out to the general public, or what can they gain access to?
Man.
So by October of that year, so Wolf's not done breaking in yet. It's still happening. Zurevin had finished the index, and I'm assuming that's what Wolf was spending the rest of the month stealing, was the rest of that index, and probably coming back and making sure there wasn't more. So he finished the index, numbering each document in order to simplify location. So now there's numbers attached to all these documents so that he can find them easily. Or if you also wanted to find them and you weren't Zurevin, you now know where they all are.
Ooh.
So he'd provided a copy to Scientology attorneys. These attorneys, in turn, gave the index to Raymond, who passed it along to Meisner, who passed it to Wolf. Wolf then entered Zurevin's office and then began copying the documents listed on the index.
Here's one thing I love about our show. We are about conspiracies. This is, by definition, a conspiracy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
By powerful people. And it's like, if people could infiltrate the government to this degree, then what makes you think the government isn't capable of doing things 1,000 times more powerful?
Oh, yeah. Well, they've had tons of time to practice.
Yeah, also, like, if this small religious sect can, like, mess with the government, how much more could the government mess with other people?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We're gonna get into some of that. This is probably this kind of stuff that I'm doing in this episode, I've kind of got a few of them chambered that are like, whoa. But it is the government's doing them in the other ones. I just really wanted to talk about Scientology. And I don't know, this is a really just I can't believe how well they're pulling this off though.
Yeah, it's incredible. I have to show them respect.
Like as I started, like I'm understand as I researched this, I'm like, oh, I get why people are legitimately scared of the Church of Scientology, or were. They're not so much anymore. They've been exposed so many times over now. I think they've kind of given up.
Yeah.
But
they think, oh, that's this crazy thing, and it's like, you don't realize how many powerful people are buying into this, or how much power they necessarily have.
yeah.
Yeah.
So through all this indexing and filing, Zurvan essentially he did the Guardian office's job for them. Like made it really easy. Like they knew for sure they had everything. So December 1975. So we're through another year, Dennis. Jane Kimber issued Guardian Program Order number 158, which, okay, I didn't catch that earlier. I guess they're not, I don't know, there doesn't seem to be an order to the order of these things. Like they're just assigning random numbers, I guess.
Well, either that or there's just they were issuing so many orders at the time that
They forget.
Yeah, well, yeah, or they, so, okay, go ahead.
It's like when you start the wrong book of checks when you get an order of them and you start at, at like 1,000, 1,150. But really, you still need to use 1,001. You need to use that book. Maybe that's what's happening. Maybe these are like stationaries. They are practical business people. They might have just ordered a bunch of stationaries for these program orders.
Or it's just like the Star Wars, where it's like, we're going to start with 4, 6.
They're doing prequels.
Start with 4 or 5. Yeah, we're going to start with 4, 5, 6, and then we're going to do 7, 8, 9. But then we're going to do 1, 2, 3. So it's just like, and then obviously the things that come before have more importance. Yeah, it's just a mess.
Or, I don't know. Once you hear okay, so this order, number 158, was intended to give L. Ron Hubbard himself early warning of impending legal action.
Ooh.
So you'd think they would have set that one up earlier. That kind of seems like the whole reason they started all of this, really. But they're just finally putting pen to paper on it, and it's an official thing within their organization, I guess? I don't know. So the plan called for the infiltration of the government agencies that had either the power to issue or the knowledge of impending subpoenas. Specific agencies include the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. and L.A., the IRS Office of Internal Operations, the DEA, the Coast Guard. And after reviewing the letter, Meisner concluded it would be better to infiltrate the Department of Justice than the U.S. Attorney's Office. Which I don't know how you make that call. Like, you know what? I think it would be easier for my boy Wolf to get in at the Department of Justice than the U.S. Attorney's Office. Like, he's just a wolf. Like, we need to put him in the DOJ. Like, there's a bunch of wolves in there. He'll blend in.
Wolf must have had an amazing resume, by the way.
I really
Can you imagine someone debating, like, I've looked for a job in the last year, and I'm like, oh gosh, I don't know if I qualify for this, but maybe. I guess I'll do that. Here's a government job. Here's a private sector job. I hope someone calls me back, and I get like 2 calls. Wolf is like, anyone will call me back.
Yep.
It's like, you put me in the FBI, you put me in the Department of Justice, you put me in the Treasury. Like, I got that. Like, Wolf must have been an exceptional resume. Like,
I feel like there's so many people. There's so many people and things in this episode that could be their own episode later. Like, I bet Wolf has an amazing story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
A rough upbringing.
I would love that guy. That guy's biography. Like, I would love to interview him if he's still alive, and if not, I would love to figure out who the heck he is, because that's the guy on the ground, man.
He really is. So now we're into 1976. January. Herman, the Southeast U.S. Secretary for the Information Bureau, informed Meisner that Helt and Weigand had approved a plan to send Alverzo to Washington. Again, just it's not important who all these people are exactly. Just high-ranking members in the GO is really all that matters. And they're all in this Operation Snow White. So Alverzo arrived on the 17th, and on the 18th, he picked the locks on the doors belonging to the office of Lewis Hubbard. No relation to L. Rod Hubbard, just to be clear. And the file room housing Zuravan's files. Wolf stood guard at the end of the hallway.
Oh, wow.
You were worried Wolf wasn't going to be there, weren't you? He's there. He's point man on this one. He's guarding the hallway while Alverzo worked on Hubbard's door. I'm assuming maybe Wolf wasn't as good of a lockpick or whatever.
I'm developing an affinity for Wolf.
I really am too, and he's a bad guy. Like, he's one of the bad guys, and I'm still like, yeah, he seems cool.
He's like that Russian sniper in that movie about the battle for Stalingrad. It's just like, I like you. You're just so good at what you do.
I will try. I should have dug for one. Again, there's just so many. I almost spun off in so many directions putting this together. Now I really want to see a picture of Wolf. I don't have one, but I want one.
I want to know who this guy was.
He better look awesome. That's all I'm going to say.
One man. I mean, you could be L. Ron Hubbard, and you're like this crazy person who says, we're all infected by souls from volcanoes. And then he's like, hey, Wolf, go infiltrate the U.S. government. You could be like, at that point, everything's crazy.
Yeah.
It's Wolf who makes it reality.
Yep.
The guy is so good at what he does that even the crazy person's demands become reality. It's like, hey, Wolf, go move this unmovable stone up a hill. And the guy does it.
Yeah,
it's like, Wolf is the real hero.
Did he start as a typist at the IRS? Was that one of our two guys that was the typist?
I think so. Let's see.
It was Meisner and somebody else. Wolf might have not come in until they started breaking into stuff.
I mean, the guy, either way, this is a Herculean effort.
That's even more impressive, though, if he doesn't even work there and he's getting in and out all these times of all these places.
Herculean effort.
He really is awesome. Terrible, but awesome.
It's only terrible because he's worked for Elrond. It's like, in the right hands, this man could be the best. He could be 007. You know, it's like, what can he not do? So Wolf's in the hallway. Alverzo's working on Hubbard's door. And then a few doors down, Meisner's even here working on Zuravan's door. They're all in here. So I think that's probably why Alverzo is here, is they needed a third man to do all this. They got two doors to get in. They need a lookout. So after an hour and a half with no success, Meisner was getting upset. In frustration, Meisner hit the top of Zuravan's door, which made it pop right open. Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like a cartoon at this point.
I mean, this is the 70s. There was no computers. Things just worked analog.
Well, so, but he's been trying to pick this lock. So the door, I'm assuming that means the door was not ever fully latched.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is weird that he'd never pushed on it at all while he was trying to jimmy it.
I've kicked open a couple doors in my time.
I'm sure you have done this.
Sometimes it's just physical force.
Okay, well, this doesn't sound like it was physical force. He was just mad and like pounded the top of the frame, and it just.
He's Fonzie.
That basically, you know what? That's the best explanation I've heard so far. So the three Scientologists traveled to another floor. So the three Scientologists entered the office and took the remaining Scientology-related documents. So no longer copying things. We're back to stealing. Okay. Oh, never mind. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Okay, so then they traveled to another floor where they made photocopies. So they just took them and then they went and photocopied them. Sorry about that. Wolf continued to make copies while Averzo and Meisner tried again to open Hubbard's door. So I guess they weren't having luck at either one of the doors because they got into Zuravan's, it popped open. But apparently, I'm not sure while Alverzo's there at this point. He might have lied on his resume about how good of a lockpick he was. So the trio then worked Well into the night, photocopying files from Hubbard's office, because I guess they finally got in. So when they left, sometime around 2 a.m., they left with a foot-tall stack of documents.
And
Again,
this is the
comical
day and
amounts of
age.
paperwork.
You do not measure things in gigabytes in these days. You measure them in inches and feet.
Yes. So less than a month later, Richard Wygand wrote to Jane Kimber telling her that the IRS documents that had been ordered to be produced in Guardian Order 1361 over 2 years earlier now had finally been obtained. 2 years in the making, and they have everything, and nobody knows they did it.
That's pretty good. Again, that's pretty effective.
Yeah. Yeah, no men are down,
It's
no
scary how
detected.
effective these guys are.
Yeah. And somehow nobody is noticing feet of paperwork are going missing. Just reams of paper.
I mean, think about it. Let's say you have a whole library of paper. It's
I
like
know.
thousands of feet. I mean, yeah. I mean, dog.
I get it.
Somehow they figured it out, though. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this account.
Yeah, we're going to get there.
All right.
Gerald Wolfe, along with Meisner, were later able to break into a room and make false IRS identification cards, which allowed them access to federal courthouses in Washington. So they really just, man, they're taking full advantage of being in there. It's like, I'm assuming they're like, man, it's only 2 a.m. Like, we got done way earlier than I thought we were going. You guys want to make some fake IDs? I bet Hubbard would love it if we had some fake IDs.
He hires the best people.
And then they did like a photo montage, like the whole thing. So Wolfe and Meisner then used those cards to gain access to restricted areas in federal courthouses and steal more documents. So while Wolfe and Meisner continued their work at the IRS, Mary Sue Hubbard, along with other Guardian office members, were coming up with even more plans. I mean, at this point, you're like, we are really good at this. Let's keep it going. So Guardian Program Order 302 was written by Cindy Raymond and approved by Hubbard herself. Amongst others, directed the infiltration of all government agencies that had withheld files from Scientology's various Freedom of Information Act requests. So anybody that told them no when they asked for documentation, well, now we're going to go steal it. Look, we asked nicely. We did the thing you wanted us to. We filled out a lot of paperwork, and you said no.
Hey, if this wasn't a cult, you would call that very good journalism.
Exactly. I guess. Well, it would be very good journalism if you weren't solely just looking into yourself, essentially.
Yeah.
And doing it just to protect yourself. It's not to let the general public know about Scientology.
True.
So, okay. On the night of April 14th, 1976, Meisner and Wolfe were on the 10th floor of the IRS building, housing the Office of International Operations. Trying to enter an office, the pair found it locked. A passing cleaning lady noted that Meisner and Wolfe's suspicious behavior and notified a security guard. Finally, somebody's like, these guys seem out of place and like they're doing some shady stuff.
Yeah.
Weird how security guards, there have been security guards in this building, Dennis. I was waiting to tell you that. There was security in all these buildings.
Props to the cleaning lady.
So the guard confronted the pair and was presented with Wolfe's genuine IRS card and Meisner's fabricated one. Okay, so Wolfe actually works there. He was one of the typists.
Okay.
So Meisner wasn't a typist then. That was somebody else. Meisner was overseeing it at the beginning. So he got a fake one. That's, I guess, why they went to make the fake card, so that Meisner would now have one. So satisfied by this, the guard had the cleaning lady open the door. And then I'm sure, gave her a hard time. So inside, the pair grabbed a hefty load of files, which we've been talking by the foot. At this point, we just use a hefty load. Like, I couldn't find a specific amount on this one, so I'm assuming it's a lot.
Yeah, that's got to be like measured in weight at this point.
So they couldn't find a photocopier in this building. So they took the files to the IRS main building, where the pair again used their identifications to gain access. And
carrying bags full of papers.
Yeah, just like nothing to see here, guys. Just, the photocopier is down in the other building. I don't know what's going on. So after they got done, they returned them to the office where they found them. And the entire process took them about 4 hours.
That's pretty efficient.
Yeah.
I barely get anything done that's that productive in 4 hours.
Yeah, they
let's break
efficient.
into an IRS building and steal thousands of documents that are relevant to me.
Well, if somebody was dangling tax exempt status in front of your face, I bet you might get super focused. So in May of 76, Wolf broke into the United States courthouse and stole keys to the office of the Assistant United States Attorney, Nathan Dodal.
The real life James Bond, man. He's working for the Scientologist. This guy's unstoppable.
I know, right? Just how? So he then took these keys to have them duplicated and returned them unnoticed. So broke back in is what I'm gathering from that. He broke back in again to return the keys.
Oh, man.
So now nobody knows that Wolf has a copy of these keys.
Man, we got to create a movie about Wolf.
I'm pretty sure Scientology would just sue you.
No, I bet we could get them to fund it.
No,
I don't. I want to make a movie where Wolf is the good guy, and they're like, yes.
Yeah,
I guarantee. Okay, we'll see. I'm gonna write the letter.
Please don't include me in that letter. Please don't give the name of the show. Please don't list me at all or what state we live in. Nothing. So,
know. Wolf is probably 97 years old, and he's like in your house right now.
I hope so.
He's listening.
He probably is. He's probably here to take.
He's like in your basement right now, like poking around, like your laundry room and stuff.
I'm gonna wake up and he's not gonna know what to do because there are not paper files involved, so my whole computer is gonna be gone when I wake up.
Yeah. He'll have a big comical bag, and cops will stop him, but he'll have a fake badge because he's just that cool.
Yeah. So he holds on to those keys for 3 weeks. When Wolf and Meisner broke into Dodal's office, stealing documents, and as usual, forwarding them to the Guardian headquarters in LA. The GO's interest in Nathan Dodal stemmed from a Scientology Freedom of Information Act's case. In April, Judge George L. Hart asked Dodal whether the U.S. had considered taking a deposition of L. Ron Hubbard. Dodal responded that it was an interesting thought. Furthermore, he promised to discuss it with the Department of Justice. So now it's getting serious.
Yeah.
Anytime Hubbard gets named, like, we're on high alert. So in May, Meisner and Wolf entered the courthouse for the District of Columbia now. And this was at around 4 in the afternoon. They went to the 3rd floor, which was the home of both the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Bar Association Library. They planned to locate Nathan Dodal's office, which was in the back of the Civil Division area near an elevator. They then searched for the building's photocopiers, because we're not carrying stuff to another building.
I love how every part of this heist involves finding photocopiers.
Yeah. So after mapping out all of these locations, they left. Later, Wolf and Meisner made a copy of Dodal's keys. I guess, again, didn't we already have those keys?
I don't know.
Weren't those the keys he stole? Stole the keys to the offices? Yeah, he already stole the keys. What are they doing?
You gotta always have extra copies, Pat.
I'm very confused because I'm not repeating anything. That just did not catch. Apparently, they get the keys again.
Or
Oh,
they made another copy.
maybe. Okay, so weird. Maybe maybe they made another set. I don't know. So on May 21st, that's really bothering me. Meisner and Wolf entered the courthouse, signing in to do research in the library, and they were issued an elevator key. Which is weird because they've signed in at this point, which is the first time I've ever heard of them putting their name on anything. I wonder if they use their real names or how that worked. I guess they probably, I don't know. I don't know what their IDs said, so probably whatever those IDs said. So after riding the elevator to the floor of the library, the pair entered the library and removed several books from the shelves and set at a table. After a few minutes, they exited through a back door and emerged in a hallway. In this hallway was Dodal's office, which they entered using their keys. The duo stole a number of documents related to Scientology and walked through the hallway to the photocopy machines they had previously located. The pair photocopied some 6 inches of documents before returning the originals to Dodal's office. I'm assuming this is happening during the day because they got a key to the elevator and stuff. Like,
yeah. Huh. I'm trying to piece this together.
yeah, this is so they get out. They drop the documents back off, they leave. And a week later, Wolf and Meisner again met outside the IRS building. The duo then walked to the US courthouse and signed in under fake names. So, okay, they were using fake names. I'm assuming they would have been using fake names earlier too.
Back when it was your total honor to write your name in the guest book.
Yeah, pretty much. And just everybody was, well, I mean, that's who it says it was here. I don't know who would have not put their name down. So they repeated their actions from the previous week, copying another group of documents from the District of Columbia's police department, as well as the FDA. Returning to Dodal's office through the library, they were stopped by the night librarian. Okay, maybe they are there at night. I'm guessing like in the evening, so there's not a ton of people around, and
Yeah,
obviously
well,
Dodal
I would
was in his
assume
office.
that. Yeah, I would assume that.
But there's still people there.
I feel like you could steal a lot of stuff while a lot of other people were around. I'm not going to question Wolf. He's the master.
Well, yeah, obviously Wolf's involved. Like, it's slick.
Yeah.
So this night librarian who asked if they had signed in, while they had signed in at the front desk, they had failed to do the same at the front desk of the library. When they announced that they had not, Johnson, the night librarian, told the pair not to come back unless they had specific authorization from the day librarian. The pair promptly left. Okay, so they really weren't supposed to do this. So yeah, there's probably not a lot of people in this library.
I just love, I'm going to go on a tangent here.
Okay.
I love how this was during a time when most of our parents were alive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is just one generation separated from most of us. I love how so much was still based on trust.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sign any name you want in the book. Look, I don't like the looks of you guys. You better come back when the day librarian's on duty. It's just so... it's just a different world. It's almost like Dungeons and Dragons. It's like, oh, the guy at the front door asked if you're really up to snuff. Like, roll a D20 to see if you can get in. You're like, oh, I got an 18. Well, he believes
wow,
you.
Got...
That's like literally the way the world seemed to work. It's just like...
Well, yeah, it was like you get a stern talking to and then go get the proper credentials and you can come back. Like,
yeah,
nobody's checking on you. I don't need to see your ID. We're not getting a security guard, nothing.
It's just a different world. I mean, right now, if I went into a regular library and tried to walk out with a book without checking it out, like police would probably be involved. And
look, okay, see, here's the thing. Johnson didn't take it completely laying down, but kind of sat on the information for 3 days.
Okay.
When they notified the U.S. Attorney's Office that 2 individuals had been seen using the photocopying machine of the attorney's office.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Johnson and the night guard were told to immediately contact the FBI if the individuals returned. So finally, I'm assuming like this this is the stereotypical librarian. I'm assuming just an old. I'm assuming probably kind
Yeah,
of
I can picture this
cranky
library. I've been
person.
in the Library of Congress. I've been in a lot of cranky old libraries. Like, it's just a dimly lit,
Yeah.
like a lot of a lot of regular lamps. Like, just this. Yeah, I can picture this exactly.
So 2 weeks go by when Herman phones Meisner and orders him to return to Dodel's office and steal his personal files. Because they don't know really anything's wrong. So far, everything's, gone fine. Nobody really did anything when they were there. They got a little talking to and they got asked to leave.
Right.
So the goal was to formulate a plan that would result in Dodel being removed from his position as an assistant U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia. So now they want to unseat Dodel. We got to get rid of him.
Ooh.
So Meisner and Wolf entered the United States courthouse on June 11th around 7 in the evening. So they're back in the evening. I'm assuming that isn't daytime hours.
You're right. They're avoiding the good librarians. They're
Yes.
looking for these nighttime librarians.
So, but you would think they would want to avoid the nighttime librarian at this point.
Yeah,
But, okay.
I don't know, but they're masters of their craft.
That's true. It's Wolf we're talking about, exactly. So they signed in, as they did before, and headed to the library. Johnson, the night librarian, recognized the pair and immediately stopped them. Meisner was prepared for this, though, and showed the man a letter from the head librarian. Wolf and Meisner continued to the back of the library, where they exited into the hallway. Outside Dodel's office, the two saw that cleaning ladies were still at work. While Meisner and Wolf waited for the cleaning crews to vacate the office, Johnson called the FBI.
Ooh.
So even with the note, she's like, "No, he got told to call," and he's like, "No, I'm doing it anyway."
Yeah.
So the FBI sends 2 agents immediately. The 2 agents confronted the Scientologist and demanded to see their identification. Wolf used his real identification. Meisner presented his fake card and told the agents they had recently resigned from the IRS. Meisner told Hansen that the pair was in the library to do legal research, and they had used the photocopiers to copy books and cases. Neither mentioned Scientology. After roughly 20 minutes of questioning, the FBI agents allowed them to leave. Meisner then phoned Herman to inform him of the news and was told to immediately fly to LA.
Ooh.
Get out of DC. Get out.
Oh, man. What a spy thriller.
I know, right? It really is.
I'm almost rooting for them at this point.
Are you kind of getting into Scientology now, Dennis?
I'm not. I kind of just want to see the underdog win at this point. It's such a Herculean effort.
It really is. I mean, they're going up against all the branches of the U.S. government at once.
Right.
They are literally fighting the man. So Meisner and Wolf were given cover stories by the Guardian's office. On the last day of June, Gerald Wolf was arrested.
Uh-oh.
Wolf was charged with the use and possession of a forged official pass of the United States. The day after Wolf's arrest, Mary Sue Hubbard wrote a letter to Weigand ordering him to keep her abreast of the situation. Hubbard also conveyed with Mo Budlong and Richard Weigand about Wolf's arrest, the cover story, and subsequent plan to destroy evidence linking Wolf and Meisner to Scientology. At the end of July, a judge decided that the case against Wolf warranted an investigation by a grand jury. A week later, the judge issued an arrest warrant for Meisner, who at the time was being hidden in LA. The FBI was able to connect him to Scientology, and by January 1977, it was becoming increasingly likely that Scientology would be unable to escape Operation Snow White without serious penalty. Though Meisner was still in hiding, he was growing increasingly anxious about the situation. It's all falling apart, Dennis. It's all
I
starting to fall.
can only imagine how freaking scary that would be to have done all that stuff and be sitting in your home just like wondering when the feds are coming.
Yeah. So by April, Meisner actually wanted to surrender to authorities. Like he could not handle being on the lam.
Yeah.
He was quickly put under the control of several guards. So now it's like, well, no, you can't leave, man. Like I can't have you growing a conscience now.
We got you.
Yeah. So on May 13th, Gerald Wolfe entered a guilty plea. Later in the month, Meisner escaped his captors, only to be convinced to rejoin the GO the following day.
Wait, who was Meisner's captors? Was it the church or was it the feds?
No, it was Scientology, the church that was holding him by guard.
Okay, so
He's in
he is.
hiding, and he's like, I can't take this anymore.
And they're
I'm gonna
like,
turn myself in.
nope, we gotta
And they're like,
lock you
nope.
up.
Yep. And then they show up with guards, and now they won't let him leave. Well,
And
because
he
they had him hid.
escaped.
He wasn't at home. They had him hidden somewhere.
Right.
Like the church knew where he was, and I'm sure had people around him watching him, and I'm sure he was talking about how he couldn't take this anymore, and I just want to turn myself in and get this over with. I won't say anything about you guys. I'll say I was operating on my own, but
Right.
I can't handle this anymore. So yeah, I guess they found him, and I'm sure threatened him. Or I'm sure it wasn't a he wanted to come back sort of thing. I'm sure it was a no, you're gonna come back, or this is gonna go badly for you. Stay where we can take care of you, because we're not responsible what we do to you if you run away. So in June of '77, after being sentenced to probation, Wolfe had to do community service as well, testified before the grand jury, and instead of the truth, Wolfe told the latest incarnation of his cover story. So Wolfe's still on the team. Like they've updated his like cover story that he's supposed to go with, and he's just spouting it off. So several days after that, Meisner would again escape his captors, though this time he would actually contact the FBI. He was eventually taken to Washington, where he agreed to plead guilty to a 5-year conspiracy felony and cooperate with the grand jury. On July 8th, the FBI raided the Church of Scientology's locations in Los Angeles, Hollywood, and Washington, D.C. The LA raid involved 156 FBI agents, the most that have ever been used in a single raid.
Wow.
It lasted for 21 hours and filled a 16-ton truck with documents and other items.
Oh my god.
Just yeah. That's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of I'm assuming half of it was just their documents they were getting back.
Oh my gosh.
Because, I mean, you think about this was just what they were doing with these couple of offices. They were doing this in every office of government. So they're finding everything. So the raids not only turned up documentation, like I was saying, of the group's illegal activities against the United States government, but also illegal activities. As I mentioned earlier, they went after other people besides government agencies. They went after doctors and stuff like that. They carried them out against anybody who was perceived as an enemy of Scientology. Another thing we could spend a whole episode on is something called Operation Freakout, which was a conspiracy to frame author Paulette Cooper on false bombing threat charges. Okay, and I'll give you this one real quick. We may talk about it at some point because it could really be probably its own in-depth thing just like this. So Paulette Cooper wrote a book in, I believe it was 1972, exposing Scientology for kind of what they were.
Right.
So they really had it out for her. So they stole stationery from her and then wrote bomb threats to themselves.
Oh, very clever.
And
it's
then,
like a little mini CIA. It's insane.
Yeah, they were doing their own like COINTELPRO stuff.
Gosh.
So Yeah, and like this lady ended up, I forget what it was. It was something like 20 grand back then she had to spend on legal defense. And then it was like another 10 grand she spent on like psychiatric help because like everybody, like nobody believed her. Like
You're
because they
right.
got a hold of her stationery that had her fingerprints on it.
It would make you seem insane.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was a whole thing that went on for several years. It was a big deal in the 70s. Also, they framed Gabe Cazares, who was the mayor of Clearwater, Florida, on false hit and run charges.
How?
I didn't dig into that one as much because, again, it was very hard. I kept on like swerving off into other things like, no, no, Operation Snow White, stay on target, stay on target.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, that also just the little bit that I glanced at, probably it could be its own episode like this too, because these aren't like short timelines. Like much like they planned all this with the IRS, I mean, think about it, like they were infiltrating everybody.
Right.
So the papers also reveal that Sir John Foster, author of the official UK government inquiry into Scientology, and Lord Balnile, who had requested the report, were targets along with the National Association of Mental Health and the World Federation of Mental Health.
Mm.
So, comparing the FBI to the Gestapo, the church declared that all the files seized from the church were taken illegally. I think they meant they took them illegally, but I mean, semantics.
Yeah.
Though the FBI produced a 40-plus page affidavit detailing 160 specific items they had been looking for. They're not really so much Gestapo style as is we're pretty sure you stole a bunch of our documents. So
Yeah, exactly.
by July 20th of that year, 13 days after the raid, a Washington judge ruled that the documents should be returned, at least temporarily, to the church, and that none of the documents could be shared with branches of the government unless the specific branch was investigating Scientology,
Okay.
which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Scientology's lawyers had successfully argued that in order to prepare for an August 8th hearing on the legality of the raid, they must be able to see the documents. By July 27th, a judge in Washington had ruled the warrant authorizing the raid was too broad and, as such, violated the church's Fourth Amendment rights.
Okay, I will.
How you feel, Dennis?
I can see that.
Yeah?
Yeah, I can see that. So you can't just say.
They stole all our documents from all our agencies, even though that's the case.
Well, yeah, but that
Look,
doesn't mean
they
that
stole
you could take
everything.
all of their. I mean, that doesn't mean you can take all their documents. So, like,
Well, tit for
if,
tat.
if I snuck into a police department here locally and stole a few things related to myself, you can't come into my house and just take everything you find of value. You have to limit it to the warrant, right? You have to find
Well, yeah.
the things that I took from you. You can't just take everything I have in
And,
a safe, you know.
and I didn't like list out what the 160 specific items were. So you're right. It could be very broad, but still. Ugh. All right, I'll give you that one. So, in August, this ruling would be overturned, though, with Scientology promising to take the case to the Supreme Court. I don't know how that works with it getting overturned, so they give the documents back now. Like I don't know, but it got overturned.
Right.
So, and early in the next year, the Supreme Court would actually refuse to hear the case. But in August of 1978, 11 high-ranking members of Scientology were indicted on 28 charges. One of the indicted was Mary Sue Hubbard, wife of L. Ron Hubbard. The other 10 were Gerald Wolf, Cindy Raymond, Henning Helt, Duke Snyder, Gregory Willardson, Richard Wygand, Mitchell Herman, Sharon Thomas, Jane Kimber, and Mo Budlong. Kendrick Moxon and L. Ron Hubbard were named as unindicted co-conspirators.
How did good old OG L. Ron Hubbard escape this stuff? The guy.
Well, again, remember what I said early on. Everybody in the church said that his directives were misinterpreted.
Yeah, I
So
get
everything
it.
that's on paper is actually legal.
But it goes all the way up to his wife.
We're gonna get to that. His wife did not. His wife was implicated in all this. Like she was, yeah, she was indicted. So, over the course of the investigation, the Church of Scientology attempted to have a judge removed and subpoenaed almost 150 federal agents in what appeared to be a large stalling scheme. The church also offered several shifting explanations for their actions. Ultimately, these tactics failed, and the defendants agreed to a plea deal. 7 of the 11 members of the Guardian's office pleaded guilty to just a single count of conspiracy to obstruct justice. 1 more pleaded guilty to a similar charge, and a 9th pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor. The Scientologists were allowed to argue for the suppression of the government's evidence. The remaining 2 Scientologists were in England, pending extradition. So, the Royal Court of Justice in London, where Kimber and Budlong's pleas for political asylum were denied, on December 6, 1979, some 5 years after Operation Snow White began, it officially came to an end. 5 of the Scientologists were sentenced to 4 years in jail, with 4 of the convicted being taken immediately. Mary Sue Hubbard, wife of L. Ron Hubbard, was sentenced to 5 years. Each of the 6 faced a fine of $10,000. The next day, the 4 remaining Scientologists were sentenced. 3 of the 4 faced a fine of $10,000 and 5 years in jail. The 4th was fined $1,000 and sent to jail for 6 months. Upon release, Mary Sue Hubbard was given 5 years of probation and community service. All the Scientologists immediately appealed, but the verdicts were confirmed.
Ooh.
In November of 1980, the 2 remaining Scientologists that were in Europe, Jane Kimber and Mo Budlong, were finally convicted of 9 counts of aiding and abetting burglary in connection with break-ins at government offices. They were sentenced to 6 years. How they ended up...
Can you imagine if Julian Assange was put on trial and sentenced to 5 years in prison?
Mm-mm.
What a different time.
Yeah, totally.
My gosh. That's crazy.
I think
and you know what? It actually seems kind of appropriate. They didn't kill anyone. They didn't hurt anyone. They were looking after their own documents. They used their self-benefit.
I don't know if 5 years is necessarily fair based on the extent of their infiltration. But
yeah, I don't know either, but
it's definitely
this day and age, you'd be talking about multiple life sentences.
Well, yeah, it feels like an appropriate, like, it could have maybe been 10 years, but, like, yeah, it doesn't deserve, like, 50 years or something like that.
Right.
So, Kimber and Budlong had claimed political asylum in the UK, arguing that they should not be extradited to the US because the burglaries had political objectives. Their application against extradition was denied by the British High Court on the grounds that it did not fall within the political offense exception to the Extradition Act of 1870. So that's what Mr. Justice Griffiths had to say about it. And he also said, I am unable to accept that organizing burglaries either for the purpose of identifying persons in government offices hostile to the Scientologists, or for the purpose of gaining an advantage in litigation, or even for the wider purpose of refuting false allegations, thus enabling a better image of the Church of Scientology to be projected to the public, comes anywhere near being an offense of political character within the meanings of the Extradition Act.
They tried to say it's all politics that I broke into a government office. Yeah, okay.
Yep. I mean, if you got to reach for something, it's not a bad thing to reach for, I guess. You don't have a lot of choice.
It's probably the best argument they had.
Yeah. So the applicants did not order these burglaries to take place in order to challenge the political control or government of the United States. They did so to further the interests of the Church of Scientology and its members, and in particular, the interest of L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology. In my view, it would be ridiculous to regard the applications as political refugees seeking asylum in this country, and I reject the submission that these offenses are of political character. I'm sorry, that was him still going on. That was Justice Griffiths. So, the church has been reluctant to discuss this operations details today, even still. Typical statements by members and operatives about this, when questioned, they're often vague comments saying that the Guardian's office had been infiltrated and set up to fail in its mission to protect the church, that those involved were purged from the church, without detailing what actually happened. Although it had been suggested many of those involved and purged remained in important positions of power within the church. Church spokespersons on the internet and elsewhere have been known to claim that the operatives had done nothing more serious than steal photocopier paper. Look, all they really did was steal some copier paper.
That's some good lawyering right there,
and
man.
And some ink. That was really all that happened. There was some ink on the paper, and it was paper. Come on. You get mad at somebody for borrowing tissues from you? What's happening? Thought this was America. So in 2009, Church of Scientology spokesman Tommy Davis said that the jailed members of Guardian's organization were declared suppressive people by the Church of Scientology and had to undergo rehabilitation in order to resume their upper level training in the church.
Oh, so he's got a see, this is why he's a sly dude. He's like, tisk, tisk, tisk.
Yeah. So, also, just a side note, we didn't get into it all, but Operation Snow White actually extended into Canada and resulted in legal proceedings against the church there as well.
I think I have heard about that, actually. Canada came down more hard than us.
That makes sense.
Oh, man.
But yeah, so by 1990, all 11 defendants in the Operation Snow White were free.
All right. Well, that seems appropriate.
So, and we're back in the church, I'm assuming. Like, they were back in the church. They got rehabilitated, which some stuff I read about that, it's very unclear what that meant. Like, it's always very vague whenever people get asked, like Scientologists get asked about what happened to them. Even high-ranking spokespeople are like, well, you know, we reprogrammed them, we rehabilitated them, and are we punishing them? Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. This was an unexpected episode, Pat. Thank you.
I'm glad you liked it.
Oh my gosh. I totally enjoyed it. That's crazy. I can't believe I never thought about doing a Scientology episode. We should look more into these people.
There's, like I said, there's easily 3 or 4 more episodes in this episode.
Oh my god.
And not even going to a different time period, just the same stuff, just what they were doing at the DEA or the Food and Drug Administration or the Coast Guard or whatever.
Again, I gotta give props to old Elron for being so organized.
Well, and you gotta think, there's more wolves out there.
Yep. There have to be.
There would have to be.
I want to find one of these people and interview them. If they are alive and outside of the church, I want to hear the story.
Well, I don't know that you're going to find any of them outside of the church. Like, these were high-ranking people. Like, I don't think they walked away after this. Like, they were obviously all in.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they have, like, Scientology tattoos on them or something.
Probably the equivalent, I'm sure.
Got the 1%er patch on their cuts.
Oh, wow, man. Well, that was super interesting.
Well, at least this one wasn't like really depressing. Like, we have a resolution.
No, I feel like we solved it.
So yeah, I enjoyed doing it. But yeah, there's definitely, I've got some other, I've found some weird stuff like this that I think I'm going to be getting into maybe for a little bit.
I like it, man.
You'll be hosting next week. You'll have something for us then.
Yeah. We're going to do Operation Sleepy Dwarf.
That'd be a good one.
Scientology's quest to make everyone fall asleep. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you all so much for listening. Be sure and check out the Facebook page and the YouTube channel, which is Cryptic Accounts as well. And there's links to everything on the website, crypticaccounts.com, to see the more multimedia stuff we're putting together, because I'm definitely going to try and find a picture of Wolf, which I'm sure shouldn't be hard to find. Like, he was indicted in the 80s. Like,
you should at least find his mugshot.
That's what I mean. Like, I should be able to get a mugshot. And because this guy better look like Sean Connery.
He'll probably just look like a cloud of smoke.
Probably. You know what? That would make the most sense.
Yeah.
Just a blur. So, anyway, thank you all so much. We will be back next week with whatever weird thing Dennis wants to talk about. So, we'll talk to you then.
Later.
Bye.